All right, well, once again, everyone, hello and welcome to our session. Today, we are going to be talking about XR and workforce development in CTE. Very relevant topic, especially as of late with situation that we are in with pandemic. And I think you're going to have the opportunity to learn from a lot of welcome very session. Today we are going to be talking about XR. I'd like to and workforce orient you, since we are in peer avatar form here. I'd like to help orient you to the folks on the stage. So at the very far end situation that we are in with Robin. So Robin, and Wave, you're going to have the opportunity to learn from a lot of controls to Wave and introduce yourself. I'd like to and workforce orient you, since we are in peer avatar form. Here, I'd like to help orient you to the folks on the stage. Nicely done. Okay,
perfect. Okay, thank you. I'm Robin Prybil, and I'm worldwide head of global partnerships for virtual school.
And introduce yourself. Okay, glad that you're here. Welcome. And next to you, Julie Smithson.
Can you see it?
Hi everyone, my name is Julie Smithson, and I'm the Chief Education and Learning Officer for Metaverse and XR Ignite, and also producing XR Collaboration, and I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, glad that you're here. Welcome. And next to you, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Hi everyone.
In from Toronto.
My name is Julie Smithson, and I'm the Chief Education and Learning Officer for Metaverse and XR Ignite.
I'm Jay Seidel,
and
I'm a professor at Fullerton College, which is in Southern California, and we teach a variety of classes, but we have courses on VR, AR, spatial audio, and certificates for workforce development in mixed reality.
Oh, wow.
I'm glad that you're here. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. See, the audience likes it, absolutely. Jay, you were actually one of the first to do it on the West Coast, I believe, but we'll talk West Coast of California in the United States. We'll talk about that later. And then off we go to the other side of the stage, and I see Albert.
Hello, I would normally stand up at an event, so I'm standing up now. I am Albert Palacios. I'm with the U.S. Department of Education in Washington, D.C. I administer a program called Ed Prizes, and one of the prizes that we were able to do is the EdSim Challenge, where we were searching for next generation AR and VR in education. So I look for a variety of VR and AR and innovative technologies to infuse into the teaching and learning processes.
That is incredibly encouraging. Absolutely. It's nice to know that there's somebody at your level driving this evolution. And then right next to you, Marlo.
Yes, hi. I think I'm waving. Hello, everyone. My name is Marlo Brooke, and I'm the CEO and founder of Avatar Partners, and it's truly an honor to be on your panel, Amy. Thank you so much.
I'm glad that you're here. And then I see all sorts of warning signs going crazy. I think it has something to do with cord being on at the same time. I'm seeing it in the chat. So if that's affecting some of you, letting you know. And then my friend and colleague, Michael.
Thank you for having me here today, Amy, and this special thanks to the panelists. I'm honored to be among these very talented people, but my name is Michael Carbenia. I'm the Executive Director of Career and Technical Education for zSpace, and we are a mixed reality platform that's used worldwide, and I'm excited to be here today to share how we're doing it.
Yay!
Awesome. And then for the audience at large, I want to let you know that at the presentation, and every one of the panelists is going to type contact information, and it's also located in the schedule as well. And Julie, I know that we're working on getting that updated. I'm not too sure how it dropped off. We'll get it, so not to worry about that. So Michael, since we just ended here with you, here we are with our panel on XR and immersive learning for career technical education and workforce development. I think for all of us, really starting with why helps to orient us. So let's start with the why. Why is XR and immersive tech so critical right now to CTE and workforce development?
Yeah, it's a great question. What I think is important to note in prior to joining zSpace, I spent 12 years in the public sector of education, all in career and technical education. And we watched the change in students, and I lived through the change in students. And what we ultimately needed was you have all these talented people up here that have created technology that speaks to a digital native that is here. So what we did at zSpace is we took the automotive, manufacturing, health, and we combined it into a platform that allows them to experience things like disassembling a car or working on a FANUC robot or just working on a human. And it allows you to do it in a way that it really shrinks the digital divide. We think so much of the digital divide in education systems purely from a hardware equipment a lot of the time, but not all hardware is created equal and not all content is created equal. So with that is we took that same approach and we said, well, we know the importance of building our workforce. Never in the history of the world has career and technical education been at the forefront. So we did things like partner with organizations like NOCTI to make sure that the content we're creating is aligned to the workforce and the industry certifications that exist in the platform. So now we're taking something that students wouldn't traditionally be excited to see. We're gamifying it as a popular term, but more importantly, what they're actually doing can lead to an industry credential on our platform. So currently we offer 33 different credentials through NOCTI that students can get. But it's the excitement of the platform, of the technology that allows you to do that. And I know there's a video we'll show in the presentation that I think will help to bring to life everybody. But what's important to note is it's a great blend of a public-private partnership of a great organization to serve students and to give them access to materials and items that they would not traditionally be able to have access, like a robot or a cadaver or countless other examples.
Mm-hmm. And yes, career and technical education, so CTE. So Michael, you really touched on the career and you touched on the technical. I'd like to go over to the other side of the stage and ask Julie Smithson. So Julie, you're known really globally for the work that you do in education. So let's talk about the how and the E in CTE. How is education being revolutionized by immersive tech? Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. Metaverse has been really busy, and I have too, building out several different resources and leading into the education sector. One of the things that we did launch recently is our brand new Metaverse 3D web engine. And this now opens up all the opportunities for people to now create without having such a heavy technical background. And so that's basically what the engine back end is that it's drag and drop scenarios. There's little to no code, working with 3D. And that's one of the big focuses that Metaverse is working on now. How do we teach 3D learning? We live in a 3D world, and more and more we're attending these conferences like Virbela, where we want to become more immersed, and only through a few buttons are we able to see different perspectives, even though we're supposed to feel like we're in this room together. And more, companies like Virbela will give us more of those permissions to become more immersed. But taking it that step back is, how do we teach 3D? And that's some of the things that we're working on with our engine, is to give people the ideas of what spatial learning is like, what are spatial environments like, everything from the audio to the lighting to the metalness of objects, or the way opacity is brought in. So there's now this brand new language that needs to be built on, and everybody kind of needs to learn about it right now. So that's one of the big things that Metaverse is doing. And I think one of the components I was really glad to hear in our development and strategy meeting this morning is the implementation of bidirectional communication And this is so important, especially at a time right now where we all have these questions, just even, what does CTE mean? Refreshing our memories and things like that. Can you imagine what it's like to be in a classroom with students who have these questions, who need immediate answers so that they can move on, so that teachers can evaluate where they have to go next? And this is one of the things that the Metaverse platform is honing in on. We've just developed the chat feature, which will mean that inside a 3D experience, there will be the chat forms of being able to discuss and talk about a 3D object in real-time communication. We're now putting in the roadmap for actual audio and video to be implemented, and that's kind of a game changer right there when the teacher can drop right into that experience and say, hey, how can I help you? CTE, this is what it means. Where can I take you from here? Do you want to go to this, down this path or this path? So communication is now that next level for Metaverse, and I'm really excited about where that's going to go.
Well, wow, you teed us up so nicely to actually take a look then at the how in action. So we've looked at the why. We looked at the why of XR and immersive tech. We looked at the how of the E and CTE. But when you talk about game changers, I want to show you this brief video right now from zSpace. Now, I met Michael and the team at zSpace about 2.5 years ago now. And at the particular moment in time, they were the game changer. And now, of course, they've even leveled that up more now with their industry recognized credentials through NOCTI, N-O-C-T-I. But let me show you this here. Wow. I still like it every time I see it. I'm going to change this back to Google so it doesn't keep playing things. Bear with me. This is new to me. Size. Great, and thanks for the feedback from the audience. And yes, good shout out that I should orient you to the left or the right side of the stage. So thank you for that. Okay. So we were able to take a look at career and technical education and the impact that zSpace has had. Now combine that with the work that Metaverse is doing, where we're able
Amy,
to,
can you
it's
hear
still
me?
playing.
Amy,
yeah, it's still playing. You said. I'm sorry, I can't hear it. See here. But can you hear it now? I muted it.
No, we can still hear it, Amy. It's overlapping.
Okay. Let me back a couple pages, see if it'll take us. Okay, let me take ownership. You know, that happens for those of you who are learning about how to use Rebella. You can take ownership of the screen, but then you lose it sometimes. Okay. Ownership. Okay. Google. Oh, now, kids.
It's stopped, Amy.
Yep.
Yay. I know, it's a learning curve. So now you guys know, if you have ownership over your screen, you're going to have to always retake your ownership. So take back your power. All right. So career technical education. So think of the work that Metaverse is doing. Think of the work that CTE and zSpace is doing together. But now when you take a look, and this will be over to the left-hand side of the stage, if you were facing the stage like you are to the left, what if you started to think about this in the lines of different industry sectors? I'm going to go ahead and show you something here. This is from Robin, and an organization that she really helped launch as well. And stop me, Robin, if I'm incorrect about that.
Nope, go ahead.
And Mark says you have control. So I'm going to take control back if you don't mind.
Nope, please do.
What if there was a way to learn
Take a look at this.
the creative arts in a whole new way?
Was a way to learn the creative arts.
This is how you used to learn how to shoot videos, make movies, the arts, or languages. Welcome to the world's first virtual film school. When you put on the headset, you enter the universe of virtual film school, where you will learn, create, and produce films in virtual reality and in real life. A place where you are taught by Hollywood's A-list teachers. And guest speakers. Where you will be transported to any virtual set you can imagine. Where you can collect.
Yeah, it seems to be
Collaborate with other filmmakers
Yep,
from
sorry about
anywhere
that,
on
guys.
Earth.
Mark Lee. Any suggestions, or just is what it is?
How to shoot videos, how to shoot videos, make movies, and learn how
Well, that's disappointing. I did just put it
to
into the
shoot
chat.
videos, make movies, the arts,
gonna have
or
to
to shoot
continue to
videos,
focus, Robin.
make
I
movies,
apologize
the
for
arts,
that.
or language.
I don't have an explanation for it. I did put it in
No
the chat.
worries.
Welcome to the world's first virtual film school.
I think that's the
When you
better
put
way
on
to
the
go.
headset, you enter the universe of virtual film school, where you will learn, create, and produce films in
about
virtual
virtual
reality
film while I
and
reset
in
the
real
screen.
life. A place where you are taught by Hollywood's A-list teachers.
Just as it says, the virtual film school that was actually started to be able to
Hello, class, and welcome to our week 1 assignment.
Utilize industry professionals such as myself, who has been in the film business for over 20 years, and being able to leverage those skills and teach young people the methodology that is being taught today that they may not necessarily have access to, if you will. And just to give you a brief background, virtual production has been around for quite some time. I started on Lord of the Rings. It gained a lot of notoriety, I would have to say, during Avatar, which I also worked on. And now it is what it is. But for a long time, most people didn't understand the use of virtual environments. And during Lion King, it was also popularized so that people could understand what this actually means. Most people assume it's a green screen, but it's actually much more than that. And we utilize the same skills that the gaming industry actually use. It's called utilizing either Unreal Engine or Unity, because everything is in real time, and you'll be hearing a lot going forward about real time if you haven't already. And our objective is to be able to help people access those tools and produce. We're starting with short form video so that they can then use those for branding purposes and awareness. And just so you know, one last thing on having these skill sets, its demand is higher than supply at the moment.
Right. I'm going to ask you a sidebar question that we didn't discuss in our pre-session, but really, when you look from a gender equity lens, for someone such as yourself, a female in the industry, to have been able to be involved at the level of production for Avatar and Lion King, etc. What are some? Tell me how that happened.
Well, there's still a discrepancy regarding gender divide in this industry. It just is what it is. I suspect part of that has to do with a lack of assistance on, I mean, guys were traditionally gamers. So the people that had that real-time technology were more male-driven than female-driven. And that has certainly changed in this generation. As I watch with my daughter playing video games, that's awesome. I'm all for it. But it was hard. I was typically the only female in the room for years. But now things have started changing.
Sure, of course. And you look at really the surge of the STEM focus and coding camps, et cetera. It's really now taken us to this completely different moment in time. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. So Jay, you really were the pioneer in the West Coast of California for bringing this forward in a way where at a community college student level, students in high school, just out of high school, or just people looking to upskill or reskill can now earn a VR and AR certificate. Talk to us a little bit about your programs and how you're preparing everybody really for these future ready skills, because the future is here.
Sure. The thing we're doing at Fullerton, under career technical education, is the approach that these are job skills, and it's a cross-discipline approach, because we looked at it, or I looked at it and saw, I'm coming from a media production side, but working with the digital arts guys and their photogrammetry, and working with our CIS guys in programming and the game engines, I thought, well, these skills can cross disciplines. So a lot of the stuff like zSpace is doing, as far as who's, the welding and stuff is great, but who's going to shoot that content, and who's going to create that content? We got to, start getting people that know the industry, that also know the skills. So we went across the cross-platform kind of approach. We have classes on VR storytelling, augmented and mixed reality production, spatial audio for immersive media. So the foundational skills that students can come in and kind of put those together. They can enhance it through the programming side, through Unity, learning Unity and learning Unreal, or go into the 3D development side with photogrammetry. And in addition to that, we created certificates for mixed reality production certificate and a virtual reality production. The idea is that these skills enhance the areas that the students are already in. I mean, they can work straight as mixed reality developers and in this field, or they could work in their specific field and and just have these skills to apply to their specific field.
Right.
So we just, like I said, we saw the need.
So it really has the capacity then to have this broad fingering or feathering out of skill sets.
Correct. It reaches a lot of areas.
Sure. And as we continue to go around, one of the topics I'm going to bring up here in a little bit is talking about these new sets of employability skills that are emerging just because of this moment in time we're living in and the rapidity of technology. But, you know, really, when you take a look at the intentionality of how and why things happen, you can have this great talent pipeline, you can have wonderful courses, you can have people who are just evangelists and really believe in the power of XR, VR, AR, etc. But I want to take a look at this through the lens of being a CEO. So Marlo, Brooke, you know, you are the founder and the CEO of Avatar Partners, which is in Huntington Beach, California, in the United States. Talk to us about the intentionality, about how your organization and CEOs such as yourselves are going to be making the difference in the influencing of our hiring decisions.
Sure, absolutely. Great question, Amy. And Robin and Jay both mentioned, you know, entertainment and gaming. And, although our company focuses on developing augmented and mixed reality for heavy duty industry like aerospace and defense, we actually bring in elements from immersive entertainment and gaming, and so we've been able to utilize and build upon, as what you were calling, like sort of the feathering out, and adopt these aspects into many different vertical markets that we serve, which also includes things like manufacturing and oil and gas and energy. And so with that said, taking a step back from things and our hiring decisions, I have to tell you a story. There definitely has been and is a technical skill set shortage in Southern California. Someone mentioned that, but I have to tell you that we lived through it. In 2016, it actually took us 12 months to find and hire a local AR developer.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And so actually this turned out to be an opportunity for us, because we found in doing this and it taking so long, that we found that immersive tech is a teachable skill. And we first looked at our existing employees, our existing ISDs and trainers, and how could we increase their AR and MR technical development skills while also reducing their learning curve to developing content. So what we did is we developed a specific product called Simplify XR, which is a codeless workflow-based AR, MR authoring tool to do this, so that we can retain and advance the careers of our existing team. And one very qualifiable benefit of doing this for our in-house employees who work on our immersive tech projects using Simplify XR is their level of job satisfaction that we see. So we find that our employees enjoy the newness and the flexibility of creating in this new medium. And with our products, they find it much easier and very intuitive. So going back to the hiring process, the foundation of our hiring process is relatively the same as it's always been. It's not just augmented reality software engineers that make an AR project successful. It takes an integrated team. So understanding the underlying principles of instructional system design, content development, it's important to start with a business gap analysis and to assess the key performance metrics to be achieved. And other skills like CAD design, 3D, Julie mentioned that, also physics skills, mechanical engineering skills, that, these are all very relevant, because in contrast to virtual reality, augmented and mixed reality software is actually integrating into God's world, into the world around us. It's not a universe that's 100% controllable.
Love that description.
So what we're finding is that the amount of immersive tech skills out there are increasing, and many thanks to the concerted efforts of what you're doing at Fullerton and the CEO Leadership Alliance and others. And with our experience, the contribution we're making, I'm on the CEO UCI roundtable. We've been able to initiate dialogues and programs to to also add extended reality to the computer science and the engineering undergraduate schools, as well as high school level.
Yes, and the idea of the talent pipeline and the importance of recognizing that now, the thinking at one time is, you start to recruit your talent when they're, let's say, juniors at university. But really now we need to talk about developing and nurturing our talent in our regions, retaining that talent so that your talent pipeline grows and ideally would stay in your region. Because as you know, in different spots all over the world, we create this great talent and then they leave and go somewhere else. And I know there's a variety of factors behind that. There's housing prices, there's just all sorts of things. But the idea of creating your own talent pipeline and really seeing that through to an employee that can be hired and retained, I think is critical. And Albert, that really brings me to thinking about work that you do at that systems level, because I don't think that one can ignore the idea or the need that required systems alignment and signaling from a policy level. Can you talk to us a little bit just about what policies and practices are in motion now or in the future that will help guide us?
Sure. So we are really exploring how to take what we did in 2014 to 2016 to the next level. And as I mentioned in my introduction, I led a open innovation prize competition called the EdSim Challenge, in which we were looking for the goal of it. The overarching goal was to foster an ecosystem of educational, interdependent, interoperable, collaborative virtual environments. And depending on what the application is, or AR, VR, mixed reality, any sort of hybrids, it was less relevant on that. Interested in that, but more about how are the various applications interacting with each other. And as it relates to the developers and the pipeline, how do you both create the content for the pipeline, but also have the pipeline create its own content? So we were looking to create this ecosystem, but as well as foster a more stable developers environment, so that developers knew better how to develop toward to the education. And when I say education, I'm talking about primarily public education systems, grades 9 through 12, but
yes,
it can span the whole range. How do you create a better business model and a more stable marketplace for both developers and businesses, as well as the education systems, in the hopes that you can reduce development costs, create more stable environments, and increase more AR, VR, and mixed reality in the classroom.
And that makes me think of for the little bit of work that I did for about a couple years of my life at the state level for the California Community College Chancellor's Office. I really had a different lens to look at things such as policy, procedure, and process. But could you share with the audience the conversation that we had, the pre-conversation, where we talked about policy and procedure and process? What takes the most time and where do you have latitude? I thought it was fascinating.
Sure. Actually, yeah, you raised it. Thanks for the reminder, because that was almost like an epiphany that I had, is that it's not the policy. Our policies are broad enough to accommodate this. We need to better understand, we being both the policymakers as well as the systems that are in place, the education systems, the teachers, the developers, the processes of how do you introduce products to the market, how do you sell them to K-12, streamlining that, simplifying that, but not losing the quality or the kind of the validation aspect of it. So it's complex, but there aren't policy barriers per se. It's more about understanding, for example, if we wanted to create one in the federal government, it would take us probably a year just to get the contract out the door. Meanwhile, once we've spec'd it out, we're working on specs that are a year old, and we're way behind the market. So that's one reason why I turn more to open innovation prize challenges, because I'm more interested in what the industry is doing rather than having the government develop any sort of protocols as it relates to educational content.
Refreshing, or just a refreshing commentary. Just really appreciate your lens through that. And I'll tell you, Steve, the work that you do at JFF, right now, everything that Albert just touched on, take us a little bit deeper. Share with the audience the work of JFF and talk to us about innovation and incubation.
Yeah, sure. When Steve Yadzinski didn't get a chance to say hello at the top, I'm the acting general manager for JFFLabs. And for those who do not know, JFF, we're a more than 35-year-old national nonprofit, have worked at the intersection of education and workforce policy and practice for a long time. And JFFLabs is all about thinking about how we leverage technology to extend our impact and create greater outcomes for both individuals in workforce and education settings, as well as educators, business, and others. To pick up on the conversation, which I think has been a fabulous discussion so far, at JFFLabs, we are very bullish, as it were, on immersive technology, especially now, with respect to helping people gain skills in really hard to learn environments, especially when we're trying to teach them remotely. Traditionally, sort of a funny thing when you're about such a,
I'm not too sure if the sound quality is from your end or from our end.
I'm not sure. The sound quality's been a little funny from my end throughout. I apologize if we're lagging. I'm watching the chat here. Choppy for some, okay for others.
Sounds like life's commentary, right? Choppy for some, not so bad for others. Tell us about the report JFF listed just recently put out as well, the Immersive Tech Report. I'm going to put it in the chat so folks have access to it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the immersive learning scan that we recently was focused on learning using immersive technologies. So this was mixed reality, augmented reality, virtual reality, and so forth. And so really wanted to do a market scan that helped organize the market along, various segments. There were a couple of things that focused on, really trying to focus on sort of frontline training. Our work was at Walmart, so that influenced a little bit of where we put our focus. But also to say that education in VR is huge. So if you think about sort of medical industry, learning is just a giant sector of the work, and we only did a little bit of scanning there. Also featured, I think it was 11 innovators to watch. So thinking about where the technology is going and some of the advances that we see. I'll just comment quickly is, pre-COVID, post-COVID, of course, we have racial justice pieces coming in to really a terrific, important focus on equity in terms of economic recovery. And, we see greater need for immersive technology than ever before. Traditionally, immersive tech is used to train things that are very difficult to repeat, dangerous, and so forth. And now we're seeing it really get into, so-called or human skill development, other skill development for nursing. So for example, working with challenging patients or things like that, where you really get a chance to work through and create a better understanding and approach to these skills. And so in terms of, where we go for an equitable recovery, we're really looking to solutions like immersive tech to lead the way, to bring some of this learning and skill development throughout the economy. But of course, digital equity is an important part of that, making sure folks can have access to these technologies. So I'll stop there. Thanks for putting some of the immersive learning tech. Happy to answer questions.
Yeah, no problem. And I apologize for not introducing you, just learning the tool and all. There's a certain view that I had. It was covering up part of everybody at the end of the stage. So I apologize for that. And then I left the stage, but now I'm back. What can I say? Okay. What we have now is 15 minutes left. I tried to strategically situate us so we could actually take questions. I think either I'm crazy or innovative, but I want to take questions from the audience if there's a way to do that. So Mark, if you're here, what I'd like to do is ask people to raise their hand using the feature of your avatar, and then I'll call on you. Sound. What's interesting is that to the audience right now, you just like little colored paper dolls. So I don't know if that's my.
Yeah, no, it does that way.
Okay. So Mark,
people turn into paper dolls when the room is full.
Yes. I see people typing in chat. Mark, can folks actually use their avatar to raise their hand, and then I could call on them and they could ask a question?
I'd like to kind of just my observation in the thing about the paper dolls, audio, navigating, people trying to get up on stage and find their seat, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah. I think back to when AOL first came around and Prodigy prior to that, and these online networks of people and how those funny 56K modems and 28.8 modems used to connect and the funny sound they used to make and how odd it was. And we would think back, wow, can you imagine back then when we used to do that? We're at that point now with things like this, where we are trying to navigate, we're trying to figure it out. Some of us have kind of jumped into Second Life, maybe once or twice, or have, you know, a regular presence there. But I think this is, we're all kind of in this learning curve together, and I think it's, if we're going to look back on this and say, remember that first VR conference that we did on immersive learning and how there were paper dolls in the audience. Now, you know, I can reach out and have haptic feedback when I touch your hand virtually to shake it. So I think it's, I appreciate all of the glitches and the learning processes, because I think these are all areas that we can look back and think, well, I want to make sure when I'm developing something that I can accommodate that.
Great point. I was doing a professional development for one of our community colleges, and everyone in the room was approximately 5-ish. And so my icebreaker was, what is this sound? And I went, beep, 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 beep. And they're like, heart monitor? I'm like, no. And then we started talking about the sound it used to make when you please connect, I just need to upload my paper. Mm-hmm. You know, when that's the way we did things.
Yeah, I go back considering, like you just said, our avatars all look like we're about 20-somethings, but back, I remember using acoustic couplers to connect to our mainframe at the university. So it goes way back, and we were happy to have 300 bits per second. So it's just, we've come so far since then.
Yes. And what I think I'll do is I'm going to expand the chat here so I can read the questions. I'm not too sure if hand up, hand down thing is working. I don't see it. So I apologize. I thought I'd try something new.
Oh, there's a hand up there, Amy.
And who is that, Jay? Yeah, take over, Mark, please. Would you call on that person?
There's a Mark Henderson who has his hand up.
There we go.
Thank you, Jay.
I don't really have a question. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I don't really have a question. I just was testing it to see if you guys could actually see it. So now it proves that you can.
We got you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good to know. Here's a question from, the name is spelled B-U-D-I and then capital M-U-L-Y-O. Would you unmute yourself and ask this question you had about syncing up the effort so that immersive learning for CTE and workforce dev includes underserved and underrepresented? Would you state that and ask?
That's exactly what I was going to ask. Like, how do you sync up all this effort that you guys have individually so that like the effort will also include the underserved and underrepresented as well, so like they can that you guys can bridge the participation gap?
Absolutely. You know, I'd like to toss that over to Steve. Steve, I know your sound quality has kind of been in and out, but you really are situated deep in this knowledge at this moment. Would you try first?
Yeah, sure. Would you mind repeating the question? My sound was actually going a little in and out.
Sure. I also type it into the chat so you can read over there. But like how do you guys, like I think it's like great that you have like from different sectors, like from the government side, from the industry side, but then everywhere. But how do you sync up all this effort so that immersive learning for CT and workforce development also include underserved and underrepresented as well?
It's a great question. I don't mind taking Amy if you're as well. I can just tell you what we've been doing with zSpace on that front. So I do a lot of work with workforce development boards. I'll give you an example, the state of Alabama. And what we've been doing, really what you're talking about, at a federal level, that's going to be WIOA, or the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. So that's going to be your reskilling workers, juvenile. That's the category that you're speaking to. And also remember, federally, Carl Perkins monitors those subcategories for school districts. So what we do is I go in, we're working right now, we're doing, as I mentioned, with the state of Alabama, all their community colleges. So what they've done, to make a really easy example, is they say automotive mechanics. They'd like more females in the automotive industry. So we're using zSpace as a tool because you can take a laptop. I can walk into any community center or really anywhere, and they can start to disassemble a car right away. And that's the other one example of that is what we found is in the welding industry, what we were finding was females typically will go into baking because they love the culinary arts. However, one of the great pieces that come with it is they have an incredibly steady hand from all of the intricacies that go into baking. So from welding, they make tremendous welders. So we're leveraging a wonderful tool like zSpace, and there's other options, and I apologize for my dog in the background.
No problem.
They're able to go in and experience welding. You go, wait a minute, maybe I'm interested in this. And then next thing you know, we get them over to an apprenticeship and they go on.
And it's interesting, Albert, I know it's your office that does the monitoring, but I just want to back up a second because Marlo, I know that you have an opinion and some knowledge in this area as well. And then after Marlo, Robin, please do speak to your point.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Amy. To answer the question of the participant, pardon me, I forgot your name. But it's a really, really relevant and important issue right now that we feel is best addressed by starting locally and growing globally. So the way we're working with this is we're working with our local United Way chapter, which is United Way of Orange County, California, who is the first in the country to basically they're doing a 3-year project and taking 15 homeless families that they're housing for 3 years. I know that these are just people that have landed on bad times. And then Avatar is providing the Simplify XR tool set, which runs, it's basically a Unity plugin. So it makes Unity development more accessible and reachable to anybody. And we're going to see what happens as a result of this. And then if it's successful, United Way will just run away with it. And then the other thing that I had mentioned earlier is that we're focusing on the disadvantaged, underprivileged areas in our community, such as Garden Grove and Santa Ana, California, so that these high schools in these areas that are very ridden with with lots of problems and gangs and things like that, that the juniors and seniors and as they're graduating, they will have highly marketable skills from day one. So this is a work in process, and we'd like to see how it evolves collectively.
And to your point, because I'm monitoring the chat here as well, there was a conversation with Victoria Allen and Sarah Manning about how to prepare professionally and technically to enter this field. So I feel like we've touched on that a little. I mean, granted, we could go another hour here. I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak. Steve, I see in your chat here also it's about a willingness to put forward the resources and policy components in place to bring these solutions and technologies to underserved learners. Absolutely. Funding alignment, yes, training allows people to reskill and upskill for these in-demand roles, and it is critical. Karen, I see that you agree with that as well. Now, Jen, I know that you had a question. Do you still have that question?
I do.
Please.
It really a really good segue from getting your idea into high schools. I'm a high school teacher, and I would love to know skills you would like seniors to have who are graduating, who are not going to go to college, or who are going to go into automotive but didn't do the VOTech school, or going to do something other than that. I'm wondering how you can get, and I think that was where people were going with their questions, I think. How can we put this stuff in the classroom, and how can we get businesses to collaborate with us?
Great question.
I would start training, if I may. I have high school students. This is Robin Prybil talking. I would highly encourage them, because 99.9 of them are gamers, is to be able to start utilizing that skill for gaming over to just learning Unreal or Unity. I would start with Unity, because it's actually the easiest to learn, and you can do that in high school. And I would absolutely encourage that now. Blender is great for animation. It's open source, and I highly recommend that one. You know, they have Maya from Autodesk that is also for students. You can get the student edition, but in my opinion, if you're really, really, really serious about animation, continue on that path. Start with Blender, and Unity.
Okay, Unity versus
it's just easier, user friendly, I would say.
Okay,
and more prevalent in the industry as well.
Yes. And no, Jen, you should probably at the end of the session connect with Marlo. I'm sure that she can share more information with you as well. But really, truly, now I'm going pipeline here for a second, because Jen, let's take your scenario. Let's pretend your high school fed into Fullerton College.
Right.
It is incumbent upon your school and your community college and your Institute of Higher Ed and your workforce to all be in rhythm with each other. So now there's this pathway that's created so that there's a smooth transition.
Right.
K-12 community college. Go for it, Jay.
Amy, I was going to jump in on that one too, because the idea of, if a student is going straight out of high school, and as you were saying, they aren't going to a trade school, so they're not going to go to a community college or anything like that, then what skills do they have? They can have those skills, but it's really actually good for your local community college or public school to university to kind of, at least in California, we have a situation where there's dual enrollments or special admits. So I have high school students coming into my classes while they're still finishing high school, and they're gaining some skills, and we're in constant communication with our K-12 districts in our surrounding areas. So you want to create that and reach out to the colleges in your area to help. If they're not reaching out to you, then you should reach out to them and say, hey, this is how can we address these needs, and how can we get these students with these skills?
COVID's really helped with that.
Right.
With
talk
the
about
whole idea of. I'm sorry.
No, talk about the impetus for nothing like a global pandemic to accelerate our moving forward into this. Albert, I'm going to tap the shoulder, but I want to make sure. See, this panel is heavily California, West Coast centric for most of us, except for Steve, who's on the East Coast. Talk to us a tiny bit, please, Julie. Canada. Now, I know that you've created an innovation supercluster there. I've been reading a lot about it. Let's put a global lens on this in these last couple minutes we have together. Just briefly, please.
Sure. There's a lot of stuff happening everywhere. Canada is, no different than anybody else trying to adjust. And I think the education systems globally, last week I was on a presentation talk with YPO, and, representatives from everywhere were there to figure out how to change these systems. And it comes back to, the skill sets that we need to teach, and digging deeper into the content and curriculum and how we can match the immersive technology with the content that's already out there. Here in Canada, we've also been given the potential of the half learning or remote learning, complete remote learning from home, and looking at these different scenarios. So the education system in the entire world is facing that same problem. And it's the first time in history that everybody's kind of faced with the same thing. So coming together like this session today and talking about these little things, you know, everything about policies and procedures, 3D learning, what the teachers can teach, you know, which platforms are most widely used in enterprise, and how to build tech teams, and how are we going to seam the education and enterprise levels together. It's not going to be solved in this session, which, well, I wish it could be. There's so many more conversations to have about that. And, you know, one of the things that I keep going back to is it's the 3D learning, and it's about the soft skills learning, the critical thinking, the problem solving, the ability to adapt as we head towards exponential growth, and have our students be able to meet challenges enterprise is faced with today. So, you know, really transitioning what's happening in enterprise and implementing that into the school systems, even as young as the, you know, K to 12s need to start to learn how to work in sprints. We just talked about this yesterday. You know, 4 or 5 months for projects isn't realistic for enterprise anymore.
No,
they're looking for 30 days, 60 days.
That's right. That's
and
right.
We need to speed up this education system from so many different aspects to meet the demands of enterprise.
Sure. You know, Albert, I have to say, you know, we're coming up right at 2 o'clock, but there was a lot of synergy around a comment that you made. You said, don't think in 3D, think about all 8 dimensions. So in the last minute that we have together, bring us home with that thought.
Sure. So this goes back to a presentation I developed many years ago. But the premise is that today's youth are already learning in 8 dimensions. We need to, our challenge is to teach them in 8 dimensions. And it's the 3 dimensions in a rendered environment, but also the 4th dimension being time. And then the 3 dimensions in our physical environment, and of course the 4th dimension of time in our physical environment. All of those variables, except for time in our present environment, are variable. So how do you leverage each of those dimensions to maximize the learning? So it might be somebody who doesn't have access to their hands or to the use of their hands, but they could still get immersed in an environment where they are able to capitalize in a 3D environment. So you know, 1 mile on the screen, maybe, or 1 inch on the screen, maybe a mile in a simulation. 1 second in a simulation could be 10 years. So how do you leverage each of those 8 dimensions and maximize and kind of go beyond the barriers of our understanding so that you can better deliver that educational content? Because that's what VR and AR are. It's a delivery content mechanism. It's not better content. It's not worse content. It's a delivery content channel.
Well, I have to express my deepest gratitude to every single one of our panelists here today. I would love to have a second session with you all. Thank you to the audience members for clapping. That's very kind of you. And thank you to our friends from all across the globe who woke up early, stayed up late to join us. A lot of great things happening. I would encourage you tomorrow at 10 a.m. to meet us back here. We're going to have the State of XR and Immersive Learning Outlook report for the Outlook Report 2020. It'll be our soft launch. If you're not a member of iLRN, please do join. Please look for opportunities to join some of our chapters and Birds of a Feather, our different houses. There's a lot of great things happening here. Mark, any closing words before we say goodbye? Yep, and then everybody on stage, please go ahead and type in your email address so folks know how to get a hold of you. Of course, it's also in the schedule.
Thank you.
All right.
That was awesome. Really enjoyed it. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. All right, bye.
Thanks.